Welcome to Alasquatch, the show all about Bigfoot in the great state of Alaska. I'm your host, Beans Baxter. So lace up your boots, zip up your coat, and come with me on an adventure as we explore all things cryptid in the last frontier. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in and listening to the latest episode of Alasquatch here. I want to apologize if you can hear my dog in the background snoring there, but we had a big day today. We went out and played outside. It's a pretty nice day. It's getting nice and sunny. We're starting around the corner there, coming out of spring and going into summer. We've got some sun. The grass is starting to green up. I'm probably going to be mowing here in the next week or two. I got my lawnmower out, got it all serviced and ready to go, and just getting ready for summer. I got out into the field a couple of weeks ago and didn't really see or hear anything squatchy, but I had a good time. I posted a video up on my YouTube page of my little trip there. You can find that on the Kenai Bigfoot Research Group's YouTube page. I did hear some what sounded like voices off in the distance, but they were too far off for me to really get a good capture on the audio, and I'm pretty sure it was just people, or maybe geese or something. It was kind of weird. I'm pretty sure I was the only person around there, but there was a river that flowed back behind the area I was at. So it could have been somebody maybe floating the river or on a boat or something. But I had a good time. I didn't really see anything. I didn't even see any moose. So it was kind of disappointing like that. Usually I get to see some kind of wildlife. But I ended up going into that area because I couldn't get into my main area of the Kenai National Wildlife Refuge. The roads were just too bad. They were too wet and muddy, and it was just a mess. They're not typically maintained. It's usually just kind of drive at your own risk kind of thing. And they actually had a sign up that said travel not advised, and 4x4s only. And I thought, well, I've got a 4x4 truck. I can make it. And I've got good winter tires on. So I attempted. I probably made it a quarter of a mile back or so. And it just got too bad. I was afraid I was going to get stuck. I was going into these mud bogs, and it was just getting harder and harder to get out. And so I turned around and went back, and I thought that, I was a little disappointed that I didn't get back to where I wanted to go, but I was like, man, I'm glad I made it out of there without getting stuck, because where I'm at, I don't have any cell coverage, and I did have my inReach with me, but it just, there's not really anybody that would be willing to come out there and get me out, probably. So it would have been quite the undertaking if I'd have got stuck back in there. And I thought I was free and clear, and I went over to that other area and spent some time out there and tested out some new equipment. Well, so then I get home, I park my truck in the garage, and I wait. I go back to work. I work another week. I'm off for a week. So Tuesday I went to hit the woods again. I got all my gear packed up and was heading back up there. And I was going up to shop. I had to pick up some things. We're working on our basement. I was going to go to the woods on Thursday. That's what it was. And Tuesday was going to be my day to go into town and go shopping. And I got up there, up the road, about an hour and a half up the road where the Home Depot and stuff is. And I realized my truck was acting kind of funny. It was running kind of hot. And, I'm not a mechanic, but I know a little bit about cars. And I got out and I was checking on it, and I noticed it was leaking antifreeze, and I ended up leaking all my antifreeze out of the truck, and I had to limp it down to the dealership. Luckily, they had a radiator in stock, and they were able to replace my radiator. Of course, it wasn't covered under warranty because it was due to the conditions I had driven it through. I guess a rock had gotten thrown into the radiator, probably from the fan, that had, gotten thrown up in the engine compartment from all that mud. So I ended up having to shell out quite a bit of money to get my radiator replaced, and that was a expense I wasn't expecting. And I got stuck up there. My wife had to come and get me. She had to take off early from work and come and get me. And she was a trooper about it, though. She was cool about it. She's probably gonna get me later for something. But it was I was pretty bummed. I was pretty disappointed in myself. That's the first time, other than like plane tickets or travel expenses or something like that, that this is my little hobby here has actually like cost me money. That in a negative sense, I didn't come out with anything, like I didn't buy some equipment. When I buy equipment, I get the piece of equipment, I can resell it, or I can, do something with it. But this was just straight up out of pocket damages. So I was pretty bummed about that. I wasn't very happy, and I ended up canceling my trip I had planned for this weekend. I was going to go up on Thursday, and I just decided, because we had to go up the next day on Wednesday and pick up the truck when it was fixed. So I decided just to take a week off and not head out, even though the weather was great. So, I did something else instead. I was going through some stuff I had, and I found some plaster of Paris, and I thought, I'm going to go outside and practice my some track casting, because it's not really something that I've done a whole lot. And I thought I'd go ahead and film it. So my lovely bride acted as my camera person, and we went out and found some cool moose tracks in the driveway. We'd had a lot of rain and wet weather a couple weeks before, and it left the ground pretty saturated. So I had some cool moose tracks in the driveway. So I went out there and cast them with my plaster, and I think they turned out pretty good. But I put that video up on YouTube as well, on the Kenai Bigfoot Research Group YouTube page. So you can come over there and check that out, and check out me and my my little dog Bubbles. He helped me cast the tracks. He was a very good helper. So I think that's probably the best part of the video, is watching his reaction to me casting the tracks. Not much going on otherwise. We're all still in the midst of this pandemic thing. Really, really surprised at people's behavior and attitudes, man. People are just being nasty. Just straight up mean to people who don't share the same opinion. And I hate to see that. We see it a lot here in the Bigfoot community anyway. But it's just it's kind of getting out of hand. There's people that don't agree with mandates, and people that you got the people that just don't care, the conspiracy theorists, and the people that are scared to death. And then there's us poor people that are kind of stuck in the middle, kind of in the moderate believers, I guess, there. And we're just like, oh man, come on, everybody calm down and get along. But things are starting to open up. Things are starting to slow down. They actually have let some of the restaurants and businesses and stuff open up, and I think there's more planned for later. And things are it's gonna get back to normal. It'll pass eventually, but I'm just a little disappointed at some people's behavior and basically their attitude toward their fellow man. So, and speaking of that, we're going to talk about a controversial subject tonight. I was thinking about some recent things that have come up in the Bigfoot community, and I usually stay away from all the drama and the BS, and if something's going on I don't really care for or like, I usually just pretty much ignore it, because I get to talk about whatever I want on here. This is kind of my little outlet where I don't have to deal with other people's BS. But I wanted to talk about the killing Bigfoot, whether it's a good idea, a bad idea, is it moral? What are some of the legal ramifications of it? Stuff like that. So I kind of wanted to get into that. And before I charge headlong into that, I would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to Creep It Real. It's a new podcast based in Alaska about paranormal and unexplained. The host is Jessie Desmond. She's a friend of the show, and she's always given me a shout out on her podcast, so I thought I'd do the same. Her show just runs a gamut of topics, all kinds of UFO, paranormal, Bigfoot related stuff, plus some fitness related stuff. So check her out and check out the podcast. I think you'll really enjoy it. I've been enjoying it. Again, it's called Creep It Real, and it should be available on any podcatcher that carries podcasts. So that being said, moving along right into our main topic of the evening. So pretty much as long as there's been Bigfoot stories and legends going around, there's always been stories of people that have killed a Bigfoot, whether they were out hunting or it was self-defense or, some other kind of scenario. Not a whole lot of stories along those lines of people finding a dead one out in the woods. It seems like there's always something, they always end up shooting it either in self-defense or hunting. Like they thought it was a bear or something, or they kill it and then they get up on it and realize it wasn't a bear or a moose or whatever they thought they were shooting. And I think it's interesting how there's so many stories like that. There's so many tales out there of people killing one, but there's not one of somebody just walking up on a dead one. And, you can get into all the reasons why that may or may not, why we haven't found a dead one just laying around somewhere. But I want to talk about specifically killing a Bigfoot. And, I know there's a lot of different opinions out there. The most vocal ones, you hear about, the pro kill, no kill. And when you're talking to them with the no kill people, excuse me, I just hit my mic there. When you're talking to the no kill people, they kind of fall into two different camps. The one is it's immoral to kill them because they're people. And the other is you can't kill them because they're, cosmic beings or whatever, and they're just impossible to kill. And those are pretty much your main no-kill supporters. You also get the ones that are like, well, if they're so rare, if it's such a rare species, then you shouldn't kill them because you might be, if you kill one, then you might end up ending the species and killing them all, driving them to extinction by just killing one. And I think, in my opinion, that's a very weak argument, because if that's the case, then they're going to die out anyway. If just the death of one, if the entire species hangs in the balance of one subject, then it's not going to make it. It wasn't a viable species to begin with, or it wasn't meant to make it. But I've always been fascinated with the tales of people with the dead Bigfoots, with people killing Bigfoot. And I there's a few stories that really stand out to me, but my thing is, with all these stories, there's never any proof. There's never any shred of evidence. It's always, we were scared that it was humans, so we buried it, we hid it away, or something like that. I think the ones where they're not scared that it's a human or they're going to get in trouble, usually another Bigfoot will come along and take the body, or they left the body there and we're going to come back and get it and it's gone. Stuff like that. So I don't know what to think about those stories, because on the one hand, I want to believe, one, that they're, a real biological creature, and two, that maybe someday, we'll get definitive proof through a body. But, with all these stories going around where people say they've had a body and then somehow or another they turn their back and then it disappears. It just, it's very frustrating and it's very disheartening. And, it's stuff like that that just kind of, when it comes to this subject, it just makes me wonder, like, why, why bother? It puts doubts in my mind because of just the improbability of it all. How many of these things have to be killed before somebody, makes it out of the woods with a finger or a foot or something, I think a lot of the stories are probably not true anyway. especially a lot of the more modern ones. And then, you get the ones that are straight out hoaxes, like Rick Dyer and that lot. And there's some that you just kind of have to shake your head and shrug because you just don't know. There's even a tale, and I think Robert Alley's Raincoat Sasquatch is some native hunters that shot one somewhere in the southeast and decided to bury it and leave it because they were scared that they were going to get in trouble for shooting it. So, there's a lot of stories like that out there. And in fact, if you follow the subject at all, you probably heard of an episode of Coast to Coast AM where Art Bell was talking to a guy named Bugs from Texas. And this guy was telling a story about him and this was like your stereotypical, like, bunch of drunk rednecks out, like, spotlighting or, poaching. And they ended up killing, I can't remember if it was one Bigfoot or a family of Bigfoots, but anyway, they ended up shooting one or more and burying them somewhere next to a river or something. And here's a fun Alasquatch fact. In that episode, I was listening to that live, and back then you could do what was called a fast blast to the host, and you could type like a little message to Art Bell. And I did that. I typed one when I said something along the lines of like, this was like, I don't know how many years before this guy comes forward with the story. And I said, is it even like feasible to believe those bodies are there? Because to me, it sounded like the guy was setting up an excuse for the bodies not to be there because he had put them, they were like on a riverbank or a river, it had something to do with water. And basically it made it sound like he was giving an excuse for, hey, these things probably aren't there anymore because they're going to get washed out or it's going to flood or whatever. And I had sent Art a little message saying, is it even feasible to believe that those bodies are still there after all this time? And he actually read my little message on the air. So that's cool. That was a cool experience for me. But I believe, and I may be misquoting here because I did no research on this, I believe that story was debunked and that guy admitted it was not true. But it was a cool story. But again, like so many of these stories, they end up, there's just no proof. And these are the stories that should produce the most truth, or the most evidence, I should say. Because, when you kill something, there should be remains to study and learn from and all that good stuff. And there's so many of these stories where that just doesn't happen. And, I'm very skeptical. If you haven't noticed already, I'm very skeptical. I've had enough crap happen to me, that I'm leaning toward, I'm pretty sure they exist. I just want to know what they are. But I'm very skeptical. I do not think they're as prevalent as the community makes them out to be. There's weekly podcasts coming out with people with different stories, and they're here. And if all those stories were true, there would be no question that they were real. Like, it would be a done deal because pretty much everybody in the country would have already seen one or dealt with one. And there's just no way that all those stories coming through on all those podcasts are true. These things are much more rare and mysterious than everybody gives them credit for, I think. I just don't think that they're stumbling into everybody's backyards like a lot of podcasts and TV shows would have you believe. So that being said, let's talk a little bit about killing a Bigfoot. So you're walking through the woods one day, you're strapped with your favorite rifle or gun or piece or whatever. And let's just say for argument's sake, because I'm going to lay it out right here. I'm pro kill. Okay. But that being said, again, remember when I was talking about people in the middle, that doesn't mean that I think somebody should just walk out in the middle of the woods and shoot a mama Sasquatch in the back of the head that's carrying a baby. I don't think that should happen. I'm not going to do that. I don't think anybody should do that. But I do think that a body is going to have to be produced to prove that these things are real, to prove the species. So, I'm pro-kill because I want to see one taken as a type specimen. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that I want, a bunch of people walking through the woods like Elmer Fudd blasting everything that moves. And, that seems to be a lot of the problem with the pro-kill, no-kill. A lot of the no-kill people just seem the pro-kill people are they're like these Elmer Fudd-esque hunters that want to run through the woods and blast everything that moves. And that's not really the case. I would like to see one taken either in like a self-defense scenario or, probably if one is slow enough to be taken out by a person that's probably sick or old or at the end of its life anyway, or vice versa. It's very young and inexperienced. So, I don't think that anyone should just run through the woods blasting at everything they see that they think is a Bigfoot. But, when you're talking about the pro-kill, no-kill, you don't really get that side of it. It's just either, you're wanting to walk up to a mother Sasquatch nursing a baby at her breast and shoot her in the back of the head, or, you don't want them dead at all. There doesn't really seem, the detractors of the pro-kill debate don't really give a lot of leeway when it comes to that. So, it's actually not really a black and white issue. It's, there's a lot of facets to it. So you're walking through the woods, you see one, and it either, it attacks you or it's sick or whatever, and you end up with a body. So a lot of people claim that when that happens, the person that does it's going to be charged with a crime. So I did a little research on this. I looked some things up. There is a law in Skamania County, Washington, that prohibits the killing of Sasquatch. However, after, looking up the law and reading a little bit about it, the fine, I believe it's up to $1,000 fine or up to a year in jail, or basically the punishments for it. So that means it's a misdemeanor crime. And here's the thing about the law. When it says the fine is $1,000 or up to $1,000 or up to a year in jail, that's probably not what you're going to get. Okay. I've been in law enforcement for a long time, and I don't think I have ever seen anybody get the maximum sentence on anything. Even if you get the maximum sentence, you're still going to get out early on good behavior and all that stuff. So it makes me laugh when people say, well, if you kill one, you're going to go to jail. You're going to go to prison. The only way I could see that happening would be if, let's talk about the Skamania law a little bit longer. So with the Skamania thing, the only way I could see you getting the maximum sentence of that would be if you had an extensive record to begin with. And maybe, you were facing some kind of, like a 3-strike thing. Like basically the judge told you, if you break the law one more time, I'm going to throw the book at you. Yeah, okay, maybe I could see that. But if you're just, Joe Blow, never got a speeding ticket, never got a parking ticket, maybe you'll get a fine, maybe, but you're probably not going to throw you in prison. For the most part, in my opinion, the results of producing the body would be worth any punishment. And I think that if you were to get charged, I think that probably there would be any number of studios, television studios, media outlets, even private backers who would gladly pay your legal fees, pay any court costs, anything like that, in order to get interview or your story, something like that. So I really don't think that those punishments, I think that law is more, it's a feel-good law. It's something they did. Hey, let's do this. And we can say that, it's illegal to kill Bigfoot here. And, it's kind of, it's just kind of like a prop law. It's something they use to promote tourism and to, sure, maybe it does. I don't think it really protects the Sasquatch. Any defense attorney worth their salt would be able to get you off of any type of charge probably that came from the killing of a Bigfoot. There's a lot of factors at play here. Any defense attorney, I think, that's been in the business for longer than, a few months would probably be able to articulate number one, the importance of taking one of these things for science. And number two, the, possibility that it was in self-defense. Remember, they don't have to, all you have to do is put a seed of doubt in one juror's mind. So I think that could easily be done. There could be one person on the jury that, maybe they had, they listened to a podcast where Bigfoot is described as, huge, bloodthirsty, man-eating beasts. And it's not going to take much to convince that person that you were feared for your life and you had to shoot this thing. So those are some of my thoughts on that. I don't think, unless that the DNA came back as human, and it wouldn't. I mean, it would come back to close to human, but I think it would be pretty close to killing like a chimpanzee or something like that. I don't think that it would be prosecutable in a court of law as murder. As far as wildlife laws go, depending on your state now, you should research. If you're into Bigfoot research and you go out into the woods, and especially if you go out armed, you should look up what the rules are in your state. Most states have laws governing the animals that reside in the state. So you can go out and you can kill X amount of deer during deer season if you're a licensed hunter. You can kill X amount of turkeys, blah, blah, blah. You might have to buy a tag for certain animals, stuff like that. Most states, especially, states that have a lot of hunting going on, will have a little law on the books that basically says any animal that's taken that is not native to the state it's basically fair game. That you could, if this animal isn't recognized, if it's not a known species, you can shoot it. And I think those laws are on the books for a couple of reasons. One, I think to help prevent invasive species. Like, you don't want an animal that's not native to the area coming in and screwing up the ecosystem. So they give you kind of a free pass with that kind of stuff. And two, they don't care if the animal doesn't live here. It doesn't matter. They don't have to manage it. They don't need to manage it. It's not supposed to be here. So, you can shoot it. So I'm pretty sure Texas is like that. And I'm pretty sure that Alaska is like that. In fact, here in Alaska, we have a pretty nasty population of northern pike that have moved into some of our lakes. And there's actually a law saying if you catch a northern pike, you cannot let it go. You have to kill it. You can't release it back into the water. You have to kill it. So, that's interesting. And most states, like that, all you need is a hunting license. You don't need a license to hunt Bigfoot or a species that's not native to the local environs. So, the most they could prosecute you for would be not having a hunting license. And like I said, any defense attorney that's worth his salt could probably get you off of that. I go out hike. I don't usually buy a hunting license. I don't really hunt. I have a lot in the past, but I don't really anymore. I go out all the time armed. I'm not hunting. I'm just hiking, but I carry one for protection. And I wonder sometimes about that. Like, if I have to kill a bear in self-defense, I know there's defense of life and property laws on the books, but, I always wonder, like, would it help if I had a hunting license? But, people kill bears all the time in self-defense up here. And as far as I know, I don't think there's any repercussions for it as long as you report it. And that's another thing. I think as long as you reported it, I think you'd be okay. That being said, though, I would get, before any authority showed up, I would get a couple of samples, of blood samples, if I could, and just kind of squirrel them away for a rainy day, just in case, because you never know. Like I said, I've said a few times on here, I'm not a big conspiracy theorist, but I I look both ways before I cross the street, if you know what I'm saying. So that being said, that kind of talks about the legal aspects of shooting a Bigfoot. As far as the moral applications, that's where it gets tricky. Again, like I said, I don't really hunt that much anymore. I'm not a big hunter. I was, when I was younger. But my thing was, my deal was I'd always eat what I killed. I know I have a couple of friends that are big into bear hunting. They go bear hunting all the time, and I never really understood it, because it's all about trophy hunting. People don't really eat bear. It's all about just getting the hide, and I can't really get behind that. I'm not a big supporter of that, even though it's completely legal. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm not big into killing things that I don't eat. If I was invited to go on a bear hunt, I would probably go, but I don't know if I would shoot anything. Just because I just don't, it's not something that I really agree with. But again, there's that, I'm not going to call them names and tell them they're stupid. I just don't agree with it, so I'm not going to participate in it. It's that simple, right? So as far as Bigfoot or Sasquatch go, I guess it kind of depends on what you believe, where they fall on that human spectrum or not. There's some really, really intelligent animals out there. Ravens are super intelligent. A lot of animals. Bears are super intelligent. And morally, people kill those things all the time. So it kind of depends on what your personal belief system is. And then again, that might be a reason why they're so hard to kill. They're so hard to find. It's because of their great intelligence. So I don't know. It's not an easy yes or no question in my mind. I know in a lot of people's it is. It's either one way or the other. But I think, morally, I think probably the death of one would be justified to prove the species exists. And a lot of people get into that. They're like, okay, you have to prove the species exists to promote conservation of the species. And, this is where this is where I get into my my diatribe about that. I don't think we need a whole lot of human influence on these things in order to promote conservation. I think they're doing a pretty good job of it on their own. They've been around for this long, and I think they're probably going to be around for a lot longer. I think the biggest threat to them is probably logging and just resources going away, land, forest. But I think there's plenty of space for them still, in areas like Canada, Alaska, places like that. I think where they live anyway, that are protected and where they can go. And I don't really think that the species needs to be proven in order to be protected. I want them to be proven for personal reasons, basically, and that's where, a lot of people, you'll hear them talk about it and they'll say, we gotta take one for conservation, so we can protect the species and protect their habitat and so on and so forth. And that's not my opinion. I want them proven to be real so that I can say, nana boo boo, stick your head in doo doo to a lot of people. That's why. Purely purely selfish. Selfish reason. So I think that I just really want to be able to wag some fingers in some people's faces. That's where I'm coming from. I'm not going to sit here and be all noble about it. I'm going to tell the truth. I want to prove that they're real. Just so I can say nana boo boo. But we can't talk about this subject, or I can't talk. I'm the only one doing any talking. We can't talk about this subject without talking about the North American Wood Ape Conservancy. And for those of you that aren't familiar, I suggest you check them out. They're under they call themselves NAWAC, NAWAC, and I think they started out as the Texas Bigfoot Conservancy or something like that. And they kind of moved their operations up into Oklahoma, into the Ouachitas. And basically for the past 10 years or so, I don't think it's quite 10. I think but it's on the high side of 10. It's like 8, 9 years, somewhere in there. For the last 10 years or so, these guys have been going out into the woods for weeks at a time, kind of leapfrogging, taking time off from work, spending their own money basically to go into this area they call Area X. And basically that was their goal, was to collect a type specimen of a Bigfoot. They call them wood apes. They believe that they're in this area. They've had a few sightings, a few encounters, a lot of other things going on. It's very fascinating to listen to some of the stuff that goes on there in their area. They have, I think they're in a different area now, but it's still very close to where they started out. They've had, this little cabin that they were staying in, and just showers of rocks thrown on the cabin, things coming up to the cabin and walking on the porch at night while they're sleeping, just all kinds of stuff. A few sightings of different colored ones, that I think they see an old gray one that, or they assume he's old, a gray one that walks around in the area, and some darker colored ones, and, a lot of stuff going on there. And they've been at this for like I said, 10 years, and they've taken a couple of shots, but they've never got one. And that really, for me, puts things in perspective that, these guys, they know they're there. They've seen them, and they're trying really, really hard to collect a specimen, and they haven't been able to do it yet. I mean, that's, they're going into the woods with one goal, and one goal only is to get a type specimen, and they haven't been able to do it yet. So all of you guys out there that are no kill, I think all you have to do really is just take a look at what they're doing and their efforts, and realize that you really don't have that much to worry about, and you don't have to call people bad names that are doing things that you don't agree with, because I don't think they're going to be successful. If you would have asked me, 6 or 7 years ago about these guys, I would have said, this is it. These are the ones, in a year or two, this whole thing's going to be over, and they're going to be, the ones responsible. They're going to prove these things to be real. And I really believe that. And I, for a long time, I just I expected to wake up any day now and see one of these things in the back of somebody's pickup truck that they had got. And here we are, 8 years later or whatever, and it hasn't happened. And I don't think they're any closer to making it happen now than they were 7 or 8 years ago. So I really have my doubts when it comes to this. I don't really think that they're ever going to be proven. A lot of people say, well, it's just a matter of time. One will get taken out by a log truck or something like that. I don't think so. I think this is probably still going to be a mystery, long after I hang up my my squatching belt and or move on or die or whatever happens. I think this is going to endure for a long, long time. They have a podcast. It's called The Apes Among Us, and they've got some pretty good episodes in there. And there's a lot of recounts of incidents that happen, and I kind of chuckle every time I hear one, because, and once again, I'm not making fun of these guys. I have a lot of respect for them, but every time I listen to one of their stories, it reminds me of an episode of Scooby-Doo, because it's almost always the same thing. 2 or 3 of them will go into the woods. They'll split up, just like the Scooby Gang. One of them will see somebody walking around out in the woods, and every time they'll think it's one of their team members. So they don't shoot, they don't take the shot. And then afterwards they'll get back together and be like, hey, why were you up on that hill? You were supposed to be over here. And the guy's like, huh? I wasn't over there. I was over here. And then they realize, holy shit, that was a wood ape. It happens a lot. And I kind of keep wondering, like, why do they keep doing the same thing over and over again? Like, why do they keep splitting up? Because it happens every time. They'll split up. They'll see something. They think it's another team member. It's not. And then an opportunity was lost. But, I don't know. They're doing their thing. So let them do it. God bless them. I hope they're successful, man. I really do. And, they've spent a lot of time out there, and a lot of money too on gear and equipment, stuff like that. And that's somewhere where my friend and I, Stephen Major and I disagree. Stephen was asked in an interview one time how much money he thought it would take to bring in proof of a Bigfoot. And I think he threw out the number $200,000. And I vehemently disagree with that number. I think it's closer to probably 2 million, maybe more. I would say the NAWAC guys have probably spent 200,000 and then some, probably double. Actually, over 10 years, probably triple that. So I think it's going to take 2 million or more, because you're going to have to basically have a heavily armed contingent of trained people that are living in the woods with that single goal, and then the equipment to basically make it happen, to take one down and then get enough of one to bring back. So I think it's going to take a lot of money, because you'd have to have those people. Those people are going to need, compensation to take, I'm guessing it would take years, and you're going to have to pay those people for their time, and so they can feed their families and stuff while they're out doing that. So that's my opinion. Stephen varies, but that's what I think. It's going to take a lot of money. But I think ultimately that's kind of what it does come down to. It does come down to money. I think if somebody had enough money to throw at it, I think it could probably be solved. If you could just go out, maybe buy a plot of land where there's been a lot of sightings, a large forested area, and then just put your own people in there with the goal of taking one. I think it could happen, but again, it would astronomical amounts of money. But anyway, those are kind of my thoughts on the pro-kill, no-kill debate. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of varying opinions out there. There's going to be a lot of people telling me I'm a bad person because I think that one's going to have to be killed to be proven. But it's just my opinion, man. Everybody's got different opinions. If everybody had the same opinion, the world would be a pretty boring place. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed the episode. Be sure and check out my friend Jesse Desmond's podcast, Keep It Real, and check us out on the Alasquatch Facebook page. You can also find me at the Kenai Bigfoot Research Group Facebook page. If you're listening to this on YouTube, check out some of my other videos. I've got some videos on some track casting, and I've got some other videos where I go out into the woods, some nice Alaska scenery in some of those. So I hope you enjoyed the show. Check us out, and be safe out there, people. Stay away from the Rona.